Airtel's love story. This story involves three main characters: Nick, Airtel, and Victoria. Nick and Airtel are a couple, and Victoria is Airtel's younger sister. Nick and Victoria first met in college, where they became close friends. During one holiday break, Victoria introduced Nick to her sister, Airtel, through a video call. When Airtel passed by and greeted Nick, the two instantly clicked. On the next vacation, Victoria brought Nick home to officially meet Airtel. Nick and Airtel became friends, and soon their friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. This marked the beginning of Nick and Airtel's love story, which started 3 years ago. Now, both Nick and Victoria have graduated and are working, and Nick has recently proposed to Airtel. Nick and Victoria remained close friends throughout these years, even as Nick and Airtel's relationship grew stronger. Airtel had no issues with their friendship, seeing it as natural since Victoria was her younger sister and Nick's longtime friend. As preparations for the wedding began, Victoria started behaving differently toward Airtel. Whenever Airtel asked for her help with wedding tasks, Victoria often gave excuses to avoid involvement. When it came to choosing bridesmaids, Airtel naturally expected her only sister, Victoria, to be one of them. However, Victoria surprised everyone by saying she wanted to join Nick's groomsmen instead of being a bridesmaid. Airtel was initially confused and hurt but eventually agreed after their parents intervened, reasoning that Victoria had always been close to Nick. This meant Airtel had to find other people to fill the bridesmaid roles, as she wasn't very good at making friends. As the wedding planning progressed, a conflict arose over what the groomsmen and bridesmaids would wear. Airtel stated that if Victoria was going to be a groomsman, she should wear a suit like the others. However, Victoria insisted on wearing a dress of her choice. The dress she selected was revealing, and Airtel strongly opposed it, saying it was inappropriate for her wedding. Victoria refused to back down, and the disagreement escalated. Nick sided with Victoria, believing Airtel was being too controlling. Airtel stood her ground, emphasizing that it was her wedding and that Victoria couldn't simply do as she pleased. The situation worsened when their parents and extended family got involved. During a family meeting, Airtel was accused of being overly controlling, and Nick hinted that this behavior might continue into their marriage. One evening, after another heated discussion about the dress, Nick walked out of their house to take a phone call. He was on the call for hours, and when he finally returned, he told Airtel they needed to talk. Before Airtel could finish showering, Nick revealed that he was calling off the engagement. He accused Airtel of being controlling and said that Victoria and her friends had been talking to him, convincing him that Airtel's behavior was a red flag. He packed his belongings and left that same night, telling Airtel that if she needed to communicate with him, she could do so through Victoria. Airtel was devastated. She called her mother, only to be told, "Victoria warned you this might happen." Airtel felt betrayed by everyone around her, her fiancé, her sister, and even her family. While Airtel was grieving the loss of her relationship, Victoria and Nick continued their lives as though nothing had happened. They attended parties, posted pictures on social media, and seemed happier than ever. Airtel began to suspect that Victoria had always liked Nick and had sabotaged their relationship. 3 months after the breakup, Airtel decided to move on with her life. She packed her belongings, found a new job, and relocated to a different city, which we'll call California, to start over. In California, Airtel faced a tough time adjusting to her new life. Even with a new job, new environment, and new friends, she found it difficult to forget Nick. She had genuinely loved him, and the betrayal by him and her sister weighed heavily on her heart. Despite this, she convinced herself that neither Nick nor Victoria deserved her, and she resolved to move on. Airtel immersed herself in work, keeping herself busy to avoid dwelling on the pain. After about 6 months, she finally began to heal. She no longer cried over the breakup and felt ready to focus on herself. One day, while shopping at a convenience store near her home, she noticed a man staring at her. When he realized she'd noticed him, he simply smiled and went about his business. Airtel thought she had seen him around before and assumed he must live nearby. She didn't think much of it and went about her day. However, In the following weeks, Airtel began noticing the man more frequently. Each time she visited the store, he seemed to be there too. At first, she brushed it off as a coincidence but soon found it curious. One day, the man approached her and offered to help carry her heavy bags. She politely declined, but he insisted, explaining that he lived just around the corner and would be happy to help. They walked together, and she learned his name was Reagan. Reagan revealed that he owned the convenience store she frequently shopped at, as well as several other properties, including the building where she lived. He was a successful real estate investor with a lot of properties and businesses in California. Over time, Reagan and Airtel became friends. He often walked her home after work, and they had long conversations about life. About 4 months after meeting, Reagan confessed his feelings for Airtel and told her he wanted to date her. Airtel was hesitant. She was still haunted by her past relationship and afraid of being hurt again. She shared her story with Reagan, who listened sympathetically. He assured her that what had happened wasn't her fault and that her family and ex-fiancé should have supported her instead of betraying her. Reagan's kindness and understanding gradually broke down Airtel's walls. She eventually agreed to date him. 8 months into their relationship, Reagan proposed, and Airtel said yes. They began planning their wedding. Though she was nervous, Airtel decided to call her parents to inform them about the wedding, hoping they would treat her differently this time. To her surprise, she was met with heartfelt apologies. Her parents explained everything that had happened after she left. A week after Airtel moved away, her family had grown worried when they couldn't contact her. They searched for her everywhere but couldn't find her. When Nick learned that Airtel had left and couldn't be traced, he became a different person. He started drinking and grew increasingly irritable, lashing out at Victoria over small things. Nick confessed that he missed Airtel deeply and was unhappy without her. One evening, when Victoria tried to comfort him by kissing him, Nick pushed her away and demanded to know what she was doing. Victoria admitted that she had always loved him and begged him to forget Airtel and start a new life with her. Nick, shocked and furious, told Victoria to stay away from him. In anger, Victoria lashed out, blaming him for being ungrateful after everything she had done, including destroying his and Airtel's wedding. Upon hearing this, Nick was heartbroken. He cut off all contact with Victoria and spent months searching for Airtel, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Victoria faced the consequences of her actions. No one in the family or her circle of friends spoke to her anymore. She became isolated, bearing the full weight of her betrayal. When Airtel heard all of this, she forgave her parents wholeheartedly but decided to keep her distance from them after the wedding. She felt it was best for her peace of mind. Nick eventually discovered Airtel's new location and learned about her upcoming wedding to Reagan. He tried everything to win her back, but Airtel refused. She told him she no longer loved him and was in a happy, healthy relationship with Reagan. Airtel and Reagan had a beautiful and joyous wedding. Victoria did not attend, but Airtel didn't care. She had moved on, found love, and built a life she was proud of, leaving the pain of her past behind her.